Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch the interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me. Hello and welcome to a special interview for The Wire. My guest today is the author of this book, which will be launched at a formal function in Bangalore on Sunday evening. It's called The Crooked Timber of New India, Essays on a Republic in Crisis. And let me tell you, you won't come across a more stinging, a more biting critique of the Modi government than in the essays in this book. Joining me now to explain his views and his opinion is the author, the well-known essayist, economist, and public affairs commentator, Parakala Prabhakar. Dr. Prabhakar, in the introduction to your book, you say of yourself, and I'm quoting, "The primary intention of my writings and speeches is to raise a red flag when I see something going wrong, to draw attention consistently and with clarity to the failures, inefficiencies, falsehoods, and mala fide intent of the government. So mine is an unabashedly critical voice. It is unrepentantly a dissenting no." So would I be right in saying that this collection of essays is not just a mission, it in a sense defines you. It's almost your raison d'etre.
Karan, may I say Karan? Karan?
Of course, with pleasure.
Karan, this is an agonizing phase that we are going through in our country, in our republic. We have strayed very, very far away from the founding principles and the values of the republic. Now, what is happening now, the kind of discourse that we see in our public life, the kind of politics that we see, the kind of street scenes that we see in different parts of the country, especially in the northern India, and there is a danger of that spreading into the southern states also now. Now, this made me think: why did we come here? What led to this kind of a thing, and what is happening? And why I say that I am an unabashed critic. There are some people who would say, "Why are you criticizing? Don't you see anything good? And if you are criticizing, tell us what is the alternative." In that context, I said, yes, I am an unabashed critic. I do not have to earn the right to criticize only if I'm able to suggest an alternative. I believe, I'm sure any sensible citizen would believe, that alternatives are decided by the people, not by you and not by me. We are only here to see and show what we see, that look, this is going wrong. This is not the kind of values that we have wedded to during our long freedom struggle and in the Constituent Assembly debates, the kind of constitution that we have given ourselves.
Okay. Against that background, let's turn to how you view the present state of India and your critique of the Modi government. And I'll start with what you have to say about the economy. After that, I'll come to Hindutva. After that, I'll come to what you call Modi's obsession with power and other issues that you raise. But I'll go through them one by one so it's easier for the audience to follow. On the economy, you write, India is in fact facing a crisis. In terms of poverty, you say, for the first time since the 1990s, the number of people who are below the poverty line in India has increased. In terms of employment, you say, it's on a sharply declining trend. In terms of growth, you claim the economy is yet to return to the pre-pandemic level. Now, this is almost the exact opposite of what the Modi government says. In fact, its ministers boast about growth. They boast about creating jobs. They boast about reducing poverty. You're saying almost exactly the opposite of them.
Karan, I would say that the government ministers, and the people who are speaking on behalf of the government or supporters of the government are really gaslighting. Now, let us see the gross domestic product before the pandemic struck us and where we are now. We have not reached that stage at all yet. Now, even before the pandemic, we were in a continuous slowdown. I won't call it recession, but we were on a slowdown. Now, on top of that, we were hit by recession. And then we adopted very wrong policies. We addressed the supply side of the issue, not the demand side. We have all that stimulus has gone to the manufacturers who were supplying, who were manufacturing and supplying to the. But you see, the point is the crisis was demand crisis, not a supply side crisis. So we have not addressed that. Because of that, today our economy has not gone back to what it was even before the pandemic. One. Second thing is, now the government ministers and the government spokespersons try to tell us that, we are growing. And, they tell, but then where are we growing from? We are growing from a very, very low base before the pandemic and especially after the pandemic. Now, when you were already minus 27 and you post something, which is a little in the positive, that looks quite big. Now, that is the kind of low base effect that is marketed and packaged and sold to us that is a high growth or fast growing.
Now, in fact, Dr. Parakala, you go one critical step further. You say, and I'm quoting you, the nation's economic woes stem from the Modi regime's staggering incompetence. It has been unable to put together a well thought out, cohesive economic philosophy. Instead, you claim it's fallen prey to voodoo economists. Isn't staggering incompetence a little strong? And if you stand by that phrase, who do you have in mind?
You see, one thing we should understand is, since the beginning, the Bharatiya Janata Party did not have a coherent, well thought out economic philosophy. This is something we must understand. I'm not talking about any particular individual, but then what is the economic philosophy of Bharatiya Janata Party? Now, when it started in 1980, it said its creed was Gandhian socialism, if you remember correct. Now, it opposed the 1991 reforms. It was very critical of them. Now, today, what you have is, as I call, voodoo economists advising the Modi government. They go in for something like a disastrous demonetization and tell us that was in order to fix the black money problem. Now, is black money in cash? Does any economist worth his salt or her salt tell you that black money is stacked in notes?
That I understand. But can I ask, who are these voodoo economists?
I don't know who they are. I don't know who advised the Prime Minister and the government to go for demonetization. They are voodoo economists.
But do you have the chief economic advisors in mind?
I don't know if the chief economic advisors have really advised that. And I feel that anybody who has some kind of a training in economics, who had looked at any basic economics 101, also would go for something like a demonetization.
Let me repeat your precise phrase to you. The Modi regimes, please note, the Modi regime's staggering incompetence.
Yeah.
Who are you pointing your finger at?
The Modi regimes.
As a whole?
Yes. You see, today, who is calling the shots in the government? Who decides the policy? It is the Modi It is the Modi government. It's the Modi regime.
Now, hang
I'm
on a
not
second.
talking about.
Are you saying the Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, is staggeringly incompetent in economics?
Well, can I say a little further? Can I go a
Yes.
little further?
Yes.
Not only in economics, in most of the things, yes.
So the Prime Minister is staggeringly incompetent in most things.
Except summoning the base, divisive, communal instincts that probably are somewhere buried deep inside the social psyche of India.
But I'm just
That
clarifying
is
for the audience because I think
that
let me
is
just
very,
clarify
very
for the
competent.
let me just clarify for the audience because it's important no one gets a misunderstanding. You're saying Mr. Modi, the Prime Minister, is staggeringly incompetent in most things, not just economics, but most things.
Yes. I
Is
do
that
say
yes?
that.
Did you say yes?
Yes. I said yes.
What about the two finance ministers he's had? In the first government, it was Arun Jaitley. In the second government, it's Nirmala Sitharaman. They are immediately in charge of economic policy. Are they staggeringly incompetent?
I do not want to comment on individuals. This is not a comment on individuals. This is not a comment on personalities.
But you commented on the PM. But you commented on the PM.
Because he represents an era. It is the regime. That regime is very incompetent, staggeringly incompetent, except in mobilization of communal and hatred and divisive kind of a mentality. Yes.
Okay, your conclusion, and I'm talking about your conclusion in terms of the Modi government's handling of the economy, is that the government has made a mess of the economy. Those are your precise words. But aren't you overlooking the toilets and houses the government has built, the subsidized gas cylinders it's given, the healthcare and UPI system it's created, not to mention the work it's done in terms of roads, electricity, and direct benefits to farmers?
Karan, it's like this. I'm not saying that there's nothing good has happened. They probably are, but you see, when you have about between six, hovering the inflation figure hovering between 6 and 7, and the unemployment rate is somewhere above 7%. Especially the youth unemployment is staggeringly high, somewhere around beyond 18%. And then if you tell me that, there is a lot of digitalization of currency, there's some subsidy to, a couple of things, etc. These are not in the same box. It's made a mess, especially if you look at the kind of rural distress that we are undergoing, the kind of youth unemployment that we have today, the kind of inflation that we have today, and the kind of mess and woolly-headedness in terms of disinvestment, in terms of prioritizations about different sectors, addressing when the need was for addressing demand side, addressing the supply side, and trying to tell us that this is a completely a scattergun kind of policy initiatives.
Let me take up something that the government at the moment is particularly proud of. They speak a lot about it. I'm talking about the success with Apple phones as a result of the PLI scheme. Last year, India earned $5 billion from Apple phone exports, which apparently is a fourfold increase over the year before. 48 hours ago on Wednesday, the Wall Street Journal reported that 19% of world smartphone handsets are made in India. In fact, the Wall Street Journal article was on the front page, and the headline was, China has rival as a factory floor, India being the rival. Do you not give them credit for this?
Now, then you should also look at, if you're looking at and taking pride in what the Wall Street Journal says, also look at what Oxfam report says about the inequalities in India. Now, it is not, let's not get into this kind of a neoliberal consensus and see what Wall Street Journal or, Financial Times praises you for. If you're looking at the kind of units or numbers of units that are produced by India, the Apple, it could be Samsung, it could be smartphones, it could be, but is that the real progress indicator?
Just for the sake of the audience, I'll point out the Oxfam report that I believe you're alluding to was about the sharp increase in inequality. And secondly, it was about how wealth was concentrated in a fraction of the country, whereas the vast majority had only a fraction of the wealth. That's the
Not
report.
just to add to what you said, Karan, it's not just but you see, it's also the increasing concentration of wealth. It's not just concentration of wealth. It is the increasing concentration of wealth and increasing pauperization of a large section of our population.
Which means that India is getting increasingly divided. A small fraction are getting increasingly rich. The vast majority are becoming increasingly pauperized.
And this trend has gained momentum in the last 7 to 8 years.
In other words, under Mr. Modi, this trend has become worse.
Well, it has become worse under Mr. Modi, the Modi regime. But will that regime take credit for this also? I do not know.
No, but you're blaming the regime for it.
Yeah.
Let's then at this point...
They should own it up.
Let's then at this point come...
The Foxconn manufacturing of Apple phones is only one side of it, a very insignificant side of it, a very meaningless kind of a side of it.
Okay. Let's then at this point, Dr. Parakala, come to your critique of Hindutva, which you call in your book the political creed of the Modi government. You write, and I'm quoting you, it thrives on skillful manipulation of the base instincts and socio-cultural insecurities that lie barely concealed beneath the political topsoil of the nation. I think what you're saying is that Hindutva plays upon and exacerbates the fractures and fissures that lie under the surface of our country. Also, I think you're saying that Hindutva legitimizes thoughts that were never expressed, but were in fact suppressed. Hindutva has brought them to the surface and given them legitimation. Am I right in that interpretation?
I'm not very sure if I understood really what exactly are you saying as a summary of my thought. What I'm trying to say is that, look, this regime, its popularity rests on, not on its economic performance, not on its any other indicator of performance, but in its ability to mobilize the population around a divisive communal Hindutva agenda. Now, Hindutva is very prominent in our political conversation today. Karan, think about 10, 12, 15 years ago, or even 20 years ago, or just 10 years ago. The defining point of conversation, political conversation in our country, was secularism. Even the BJP used to say, look, we are secular, but genuine secular. Congress is secular, but it is pseudo-secular. All the other parties are pseudo-secular. We are genuinely secular. You see, the point is this I'm trying to make is that BJP, what 10 years ago, 15 years ago, did not jettison the term secularism. It was not, it was still fighting shy to say that they are Hindutva votaries.
That has been jettisoned under Mr. Modi.
Completely.
In fact, you go further, don't you? You're saying that the Hindutva plays upon what you call base instincts in our people. It plays upon our insecurities. It appeals to the dark side of us.
Yeah, that's what I said. Now, I also, in another part of the book, I also talk about, now look, this kind of a psyche, this kind of insecurities, these kind of fears, the most fertile ground for these to thrive was immediately after partition. Because you see, you had large numbers of population, transfer of population, dead bodies coming from the other side of the border, dead bodies going from this side of the border, complete dislocation. And each one holding a grudge against not just individuals, but larger communities. That was the most favorable, fertile ground for the kind of politics that we see today. But then it did not happen then.
In fact,
Now,
let me quote that bit. Let me quote that bit of your book, because I think it will be enlightening for the audience to hear your precise words. You write, it is puzzling that Hindu majoritarian ideology is more acceptable today than it ever was, even in the years immediately after partition. And then you add, the key to understanding the crookedness of the timber of New India perhaps lies in solving this puzzle. But let me put this to you. If Hindu majoritarianism is more popular today than even at the time of partition, surely Mr. Modi will see that as his success. He won't see it as a puzzle.
Now, it probably is his success. But then that is the trend that has to be arrested. Now, if somebody is a real unabashed votary of that kind of a politics, that party or that collection, that platform should have entered not like a Trojan horse, but completely as a votary of that particular creed, isn't it? But then 2014, the conversation was not that. 2014, the conversation was development, clean government, non-corrupt platform. And then I say in some other part of the book also that Mr. Modi went on saying in his election campaigns, the fight is not between Hindu and Muslim. The fight is between unemployment and poverty on the one side and Hindus and Muslims together.
Absolutely. What you're saying is that Hindutva was ushered in deceptively. A facade was created by talking about economic issues, about talking about commitment to democracy, calling parliament the temple of democracy. But behind that, deceptively, Hindutva was ushered in. That's the point you're making in your book.
It was smuggled in. It was on the sly. The nation...
Yeah. Sorry, carry on.
The nation was not told what they were signing up for.
The problem, Dr. Parakar, is that the nation has nonetheless accepted it. I take your point, it was ushered in deceptively by subterfuge and, to use your words, on the sly. But let me quote again why I believe the nation has accepted it. And I'm quoting from your book. It is not from performance that the present dispensation draws and renews its political legitimacy and power. It is from an assertion of Hindu identity, from the process of othering non-Hindu identities. Now, I don't deny the veracity of what you're saying, but doesn't this mean that the biggest percentage of voters, the 38% that voted for the BJP in 2019,
that's a minority.
But the biggest percentage, I said. I didn't say majority. I said the biggest minority.
The biggest minority.
It is.
But I would say...
Let me finish. Let me finish. The point I'm making is, if Hindutva has accorded Mr. Modi legitimacy, right, then the biggest percentage of voters, the 38% who voted for him, and perhaps they voted as Hindus, agree. And that is why, in their eyes, Modi has become legitimate. And that's the problem. What Mr. Modi is doing is happening deceptively. It's appealing to the base instincts of Indians and to the darker side of our character. All of that is true. But if the biggest percentage of voters agree and accord him legitimacy, we have a problem.
No, we don't have a problem, actually, Karan. I look at it this way. Now, what is the mission? What is the goal and the aim of a leadership? It is to see that the fissures are addressed, harmony is built, not to appeal to the base instincts. We all have base instincts, don't we? But that's not the role of the leader, role of the leadership. The role of the leadership.
In an ideal world, you're right. In an ideal world,
I'm for an ideal world.
But the problem is that in the world that is not ideal, by appealing to what you call our base instincts and our dark side, Mr. Modi has established a rapport with the people, or at least a sufficient percentage to ensure he keeps coming back to power.
That again is because of the first past the post system and territorial constituency, which I address in my epilogue. Must have seen that.
Absolutely. But
Yeah.
until you change,
But then you see the point is that if a leadership chooses to mobilize the electorate and the people around, because after all, today what we have is a kind of democracy where mobilization of voters, whoever mobilizes the largest number of voters is in power. Now, given that, if a leader chooses, if a regime chooses, if a political platform chooses to mobilize around a base instinct, this has to be exposed and it has to be fought and it has to be defeated.
And that brings us to the incapacity of the opposition to actually take on this challenge and to actually expose what Mr. Modi is doing as appealing to our base instincts rather than working for our development. But I'll come to the opposition in a moment's time. Before that, there's one more aspect of your critique of Mr. Modi that I'd like to take on board, and then we'll come to the opposition. You say, side by side with Hindutva is also the enormous power the Modi regime has acquired. You write, the Modi regime is obsessed with untrammeled power to do as it pleases. Democracy is a nuisance. You also say, fear is a hard and visible reality today. And you add, never since the emergency of 75-77 has there been so much fear in society. In which case, let me put this to you. How do you respond to the fact that you can publish a book like this and say all those critical things about Mr. Modi which are there, including calling him staggeringly incompetent? And you can speak in this interview to me, and both of us will remain free, and people will say, that proves Dr. Parakar is exaggerating. How do you respond to that view?
Now, the point is this, Karan. Let me say this. I actually chose not to say this, but since you're very provocative interlocutor, and you're making me say things that I decided not to say. But since you put it, and I do not want the viewers to misunderstand what I have in my mind. You see, it wasn't easy for me to publish this book. I must say this, and I don't want to say anything more on it. This was not an easy thing to publish. It really took me a long time, and it really took me to, I knocked at a lot of doors, and they were all very polite. They won't straight away say no. They would say, we'll have to think about it. And, we have so many lined up already. And, it could be after 2024.
You're talking about publishers. You're talking about publishers.
Exactly, yes. So it wasn't an easy thing, number one. Number two, freedom of speech is not what happens whether you are able to speak or not. Freedom of speech, the test for it is what happens after you speak.
In other words, the test will be what happens to you and me after this interview.
The jury is out.
Okay. Against this background, let's come to how you view the BJP. And after that, I'll come to the opposition. You're right. It is not burdened by constitutional norms and democratic niceties, and it's not averse to lying and deceiving. It is willing to use state institutions to advance its political goals. It does not hesitate to summon the dark elements that swim below the surface and to tap into the animosities and cleavages that lie dormant in a stratified and diverse society like India. Again, I'm not disputing what you've written, but the BJP proudly claims it is the largest political party in the country. It claims it has a membership of over 100 million.
Karan, let me correct you.
What does that tell us?
They say it is the largest political party in the world.
That's right. Did I not say that?
No, you said India.
My apologies. I meant in the world. And it has a membership, they claim, of over 100 million. What then does this tell us about that membership? What does it tell us about that 100 million fellow citizens of ours who, with their eyes open, have consciously joined a party which, as you say, lies and deceives, which does not hesitate to summon the dark elements in our character, that taps into animosities, that doesn't observe constitutional norms and democratic niceties. What are we saying about 100 million of our fellow citizens who've consciously joined such a party?
I am not with you when you say that if 100 million people say yes to something, that necessarily have to be right. I don't agree with that kind of a creed. Majority does not bestow an opinion with truth. Probably they might feel that today, tomorrow they might not feel it. And you see, there are different categories of BJP supporters, and I've dealt with that also. I have no quarrel with people who genuinely believe that this kind of an agenda is good for India. I have a quarrel with them at an ideological level, yes. I don't agree with it, and I would put my counter arguments to that. But people who struck a Faustian bargain with this kind of a thing, because this is now on the rise. This is now the happening thing. Let us now you see that all over the country, especially in our TV studios, in our newsrooms, in our press rooms, in our newspapers, in our televisions, a lot of such circles. They have struck a Faustian bargain. But you see, the danger is that these people, when there was a previous regime, these people were with that regime. And
can I interrupt and clarify for the audience what a Faustian bargain is? It's actually a bargain with the devil. It's exactly. A bargain with the devil.
You sell your soul and get a bargain so that you're comfortable, your career progresses, and you make your money, etc.
And you're saying that the majority of people who've joined the BJP.
No, I'm not saying the majority.
It's a very large number.
There is a significantly large number, but you see, they have an outsized influence. They're influential. They write. They speak. From places like where you are sitting, and they communicate. They're skillful.
Okay, let's then at this point come to what you say about the opposition, because as I said in my introduction, you are bitingly and stingingly critical of the BJP. In fact, I said people will find it hard to find a critique that is more stinging and biting than yours. But you're also equally sharply critical of the opposition. And this is where that thought you alluded to earlier comes in. The failure of the opposition to credibly oppose Hindutva. You write, and I'm quoting you, the failure of the non-BJP political class is the main reason why our country today is a crooked edifice. The effective challenge should have come from political parties ideologically opposed to the BJP and its parivar. But they have failed us. A long, consistent failure of vision, strategy, and energy. Let me put this to you. Many people would perhaps agree that this applies to Congress, perhaps even personally to Rahul Gandhi. But does it also apply to state chief ministers who've won consistently in their states like Mamata Banerjee, M.K. Stalin, Naveen Patnaik, Arvind Kejriwal, Pinarayi Vijayan, Jagmohan Reddy, K. Chandrasekhar Rao? They win in their states. Have they also failed, as you put it, in terms of vision, strategy, and energy?
Okay. Let me answer this on my terms. Correct. First of all, I do not want to bring in any names. That's always been my creed. It's not only the failure of the major non-BJP opposition, which ostensibly claims to be wedded to the founding principles and founding values of our constitution, to oppose, but also to fathom, to understand, to detect the kind of threat that was continuously, assiduously being built up over the years. This is something very important that I want you and the the viewers and the listeners to understand this. You see, when Congress UPA won the election in 2004 and 2009, and before that there was some kind of a musical chase between say Congress and then Janata and then Janata Dal and things like that. Everybody in this particular thought school of thought were complacent that an assault on the constitutional values has died down. But that was not the case.
Can I
Very
interrupt?
quiet.
What you're saying is that opposition parties assumed that we can take India's secular inclusive creed for granted, and that assumption was a terrible mistake.
You put it much better than what I could say.
I'm quoting you actually from your book.
Yeah, that's precisely the thing. They've just taken it for granted that it is on a secure foundation. Nobody can really assault it. It is beyond that. So
tell me something. Was this a mistake made out of confidence or complacency? Maybe complacency is the better word. Or was it a mistake made because they didn't actually realize the true character of the BJP? Which was it, complacency or an inability to understand the BJP?
Inability to understand BJP led to complacency. Both are right. One. The second thing, and I think it adds to what we have been talking about, is that most of these political parties thought, and still I'm afraid think, that politics is election to election. They're actually sleepwalking from election to election. But you see, politics is political sociology. Politics is political economy. Politics does not stand in a vacuum. How the society is molded, how the economy is molded. These things really make a huge impact on what happens in an election. What happens in
a sense, the point you're making is underwritten by something else you've written in your book about the opposition. You say the second mistake they made was doing business with the BJP, i.e. supporting it either from the outside or supporting it from the inside, as Mamata Banerjee and Naveen Patnaik did, even when they were ideologically incompatible with it. In a sense, like some of the members of the BJP who we earlier said were guilty of a Faustian pact, so are these political parties. The Mamata Banerjees and the Naveen Patnaiks, when it suited their interests, supported the BJP under the facade of an Atal Bihari Vajpayee. Then they broke free. But they too did business, even though they were ideologically incompatible with it, and helped give, as you put it, they lent acceptability and respect to the BJP's illiberal ideology.
I'll add something to what you said, Karan. There was a time, I'm sure you remember, most of the viewers also would remember, there was a time not very long ago, BJP's leadership always used to say, look, there should not be any political untouchability. BJP is not an untouchable party. BJP is a legitimate party. Now, they were, at that time, their main idea, their main goal, their main aim, objective was to get some kind of an acceptance that we are also, a legitimate, dignified, we also deserve a legitimate, dignified presence at the table. That's what they, and that is the reason why they used to say we are also secular, but we are genuine secularists. Now, this was and you see, when political parties aligned with them, as you said, they've lent legitimacy to that.
I was actually quoting you. It's not my words; those were your words. But are you also going on to say that the Mamata Banerjees, the Naveen Patnaiks, the TDP that supported the NDA alliance from the outside, I think he was also convener of the alliance. Did they realize that by doing so, not only were they giving legitimacy and credibility to an ideology that they opposed, but that they were helping create, and I'm using a word that I think you use, a monster that they'd never be able to defeat.
You see, they could not size up. They could not size up with what kind of an animal they were dealing with.
Lack of intelligence? Is this lack of intelligence on their part that they could size it up?
Very opportunistic kind of a, okay, it pays now, it pays in this election, it pays in that election. I can have some kind of a presence in the central government. I can have some kind of a 2 or 3 or 4% of vote, addition to my whatever kitty that I have already. This kind of very, very utilitarian kind of a political utilitarian kind of a considerations, which should not have been the case if they were really wedded to the founding principles and values and objectives of our republic. That was
what you're saying.
They've lost sight of. Now they've also misunderstood that BJP, when they projected Atal Bihari Vajpayee as its leader, etc., then probably they thought that now the polarization in Indian politics is one center left, the other center right.
But you're also saying, aren't you, Dr. Parikala, that opportunism, to use your phrase, and the pursuit of their own or their party's self-interest blinded them to the pitfalls of what they were doing by allying with the BJP and giving it credibility?
It did. That is precisely the reason why we landed here. Some of the people within the Parivar, they did not try to conceal this kind of a thing. In fact, there was a very prominent leader from that school of thought who said Vajpayee was a mukhota.
Govindacharya. That's the man. I think it's very important to name people because it's unfair to the audience to talk and not fully explain. It leaves the audience bewildered, and that's not fair on them, which is why I named him. The truth is that
the people have missed it. All the kind of political formation that I'm talking about, those who are wedded to secular, plural, diverse kind of an idea of India, they're completely off-cent. They were misled. They saw an opportunity in sharing the spoils of power rather than trying to look at, what kind of an animal is this?
Absolutely. But the truth is, Dr. Parikala, in these collection of essays...
Parakala.
Sorry, my apologies. The truth is, Dr. Parakala, in these essays, you actually go one step further. You even blame the Indian people for what you call the crooked timber. When you discuss Hindutva, you write, and I'm quoting you, it is us as a people who must ultimately take the blame for this. And you say it again when you talk about the Prime Minister's lies. You write, the Prime Minister and his government get away with misinformation, ambivalent statements, and plain lies because we as a people demand neither information nor accountability. I take it what you're saying is that we have the power to remedy and correct, but we're not using it.
You see, I won't put it the same way as you did. I'm not blaming. I'm being critical. They're two different things. I could have made a mistake. I realize it. I'm critical of it. It's not a blame. I'm not blaming the Indian people. I'm only trying to voice, look, this is where you could have gone wrong. You had gone wrong, in my understanding. So let us correct that. Let us see what the reality is. What kind of a regime have we put in place because of our indifference, because we have not really sized up, or because we were taken in by this kind of
I accept your point. You're not necessarily blaming, although that's an interpretation that's legitimate. You're actually pointing out and criticizing. But in that criticism, you're also indicating to the people, subtly, no doubt, that they have the power and capacity to correct things. That Shakti is with them. They simply have to wake up and use it.
Yes. I believe in it. And that is precisely the reason why I wrote this and I brought this out. If I had not believed, if I had no belief that we could really change things, then this would be infectious.
Okay.
It would have been useless. Yes.
This brings me to your conclusion, and to my mind, as I read the book, it's a two-part conclusion. To begin with, you write, and I'm quoting you, our democracy is in crisis, our social fabric is torn, our economy is in peril, and we are being dragged back to the dark ages. That part of your conclusion is your verdict on the Modi government.
I stand by each and every word, Karan, of what I've said that there. We are being dragged to dark ages. Look at the kind of addresses that the government leaders are giving to the science congresses about plastic surgery and things like that, and the kind of
you're referring to the Prime Minister October 2014 when he said that the fact that Ganesh had an elephant head was proof that in fact plastic surgery.
And the
also went on to say the fact that Karan was born through Kunti's ear is proof that there was genetic science developed at the time. But it wasn't set to a science conference. I believe it was set to doctors at Reliance Hospital, if I'm correct. But never mind.
It was in Science Congress.
But it was the Prime Minister October 2014. Let me then come to what I think is the second part of your conclusion. And I think it's equally important as the first. You say India is truly at a crossroads. It has to soon decide whether to allow the Hindutva narrative to overwhelm the country's political discourse completely, or to aggressively and confidently reclaim the lost space for the idea of India as a liberal democracy that celebrates its diversity. This suggests that we have the capacity and we have at least one opportunity to change things and to give ourselves a better future.
I strongly believe in that, Karan. Yes, we do have the kind of strength, and at least now the Republic allows us to reject this kind of a narrative and bring back a narrative which is closer, which is in conformity, which is in harmony with the founding ideals of our republic. Now, I do not want to see what kind of a growth we have achieved, what kind of, you said about iPhones and Apple phones and things like that. I'm not talking about it. I'm not also talking about whether something is economically, utility wise. Is it good or bad? Is it efficient? Is it not efficient? It's not that. I'm only talking about a society, a republic, which is just. That does not define you and me on the basis of our birth. Now, I have not chosen to be born in the womb of a Hindu mother, nor have you. Nobody has chosen to be born in a particular caste or in a particular region, a particular language, a particular nation, any of these things. It is an accident of birth. Now, just because of that, you want to lynch somebody? You want to treat somebody as second class? People who have been here for ages and ages and ages who are here. Why should you discriminate? If that is the kind of fallout of a narrative that you are propagating, a narrative on the basis of which you are getting elected, a narrative on the basis of which you are enacting laws, acts, like the Citizenship Act. Now, should it be encouraged or should it be rejected? This is the stark question before every citizen of India today.
Absolutely. And that is why you say India is truly at a crossroads. And that is why you believe we have the Shakti, we have the capacity to change things, provided we're prepared to use it. Let me then end this interview by asking you one last question. What would happen if Mr. Modi and the BJP win a third term in 2024? I have to tell you, many people believe that's more than likely.
Even, in fact, I myself say that in the book.
In which case, what will happen to India?
I think it goes down even deeper into this kind of
What does going
abyss.
down even deeper mean? What sort of country will we become?
Well, we have seen all the signs now. It could end up as a theocratic state. It could end up as a Hindu Rashtra. It could end up where people who do not belong to the majority religion will have to content themselves with being second-class citizens.
Can I put it like this? Would a third victory for Mr. Modi and the BJP spell disaster for India?
It does, yes.
Do you accept that word disaster? You accept the word
yes,
disaster?
Yes. Is there a stronger word?
What would you prefer?
You tell me. It's going to be a huge disaster. It is going to be a disaster for India, for the idea of India, for a lot of people who do not see. It is not going to be a democratic country. It is not going to be a secular country. It is not going to respect diversity. It is one nation, one political party, one religion, probably one language.
It sounds to me
so every other, the othering is in danger.
Tell me, it sounds to me as if you're saying a third term for Mr. Modi is not just a disaster, it will spell the end of India as we know it, as we love it.
End of idea of India, yes, which was rooted in our freedom movement, which was rooted in our constitution, which was rooted in the initial stages of the shaping of our republic and our nation. Yes.
Dr. Parakala, and my apologies for having mispronounced your name accidentally in the middle.
No problem.
Dr. Parakala, I'm deeply grateful for this interview. This is a book which I think will be extremely controversial, but it also needs to be widely read. And there are few people who have had the guts to say openly and repeatedly, because you said it twice on this program, that Narendra Modi is staggeringly incompetent, not just in economics, but as you said, in most things. I thank you for your openness. I applaud your courage. And I hope and pray you stay safe.
Thank you very much, Karan.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch The Interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me.